My parents stole my $75,000 inheritance for my brother's business dreams. Now they want me to save his kids from foster care. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. I'm 29 now, but this nightmare started when I was 19, fresh out of high school and ready to start my pre-med studies. My whole life, I dreamed of becoming a doctor. My late grandfather believed in that dream too. He'd been setting aside money for my medical school since I was 5 years old. Growing up, money was always tight in our house. Dad worked construction, Mom was a part-time secretary. But Grandpa Joe, my mom's father, was different. He'd been a successful small business owner and always told me education was the key to breaking our family's cycle of financial struggle. Every birthday, every Christmas, every good report card, more money went into what he called my future doctor fund. My older brother Marcus is 2 years older than me, and he was never academically inclined. He barely graduated high school and jumped between jobs: restaurant work, retail, some manual labor. He was charming though, always full of big ideas and grand plans that never quite worked out. Mom and Dad always made excuses for him, saying he just needed to find his path. When I was 17, Grandpa Joe passed away from cancer. I was devastated. He'd been my biggest supporter and closest family member. At the funeral, Mom pulled me aside and told me that Grandpa had left his entire savings to my education fund. Combined with what was already there, it totaled about $75,000, enough to cover most of my undergraduate pre-med and make a serious dent in medical school costs. I remember feeling this incredible mix of grief and gratitude, even in death. Grandpa Joe was making sure I could chase my dreams. The money was in a trust account that would transfer to me when I turned 18, but Mom and Dad were trustees until then. Everything seemed on track. I got accepted to a good university with a strong pre-med program. I planned to live in the dorms my first year, then get an apartment with roommates. I had it all mapped out: 4 years of undergrad, then medical school, and finally becoming the doctor Grandpa Joe always believed I could be. Then about 6 months before my 18th birthday, Marcus came home with his biggest idea yet. He'd met some guy who ran a food truck business and wanted Marcus as a partner. Marcus was convinced this was his ticket to success. He'd start with one truck, then expand to a whole fleet. He was more excited than I'd ever seen him. The problem was, he needed startup capital. A lot of it. The truck alone cost $45,000. Then there was equipment, permits, insurance, initial inventory. He needed about $60,000 to get started. Marcus had maybe $2,000 to his name. Mom and Dad were swept up in his enthusiasm. "This is it," Mom kept saying. "This is Marcus finally finding his calling." Dad nodded along, talking about how proud he'd be to see his son as a business owner. They started talking about loans, but their credit wasn't great, and banks weren't interested in lending to someone with Marcus' work history. That's when the conversations started, hushed discussions between my parents that stopped when I walked into rooms, comments about how the family needed to pull together, and how sometimes we have to adjust our plans. I didn't think much of it at first. I was busy with my senior year, working part-time at a pharmacy to get healthcare experience. A few weeks before my 18th birthday, I casually mentioned to Mom that I needed to start the paperwork to transfer the trust fund to my name for college. She got this weird look on her face and said we'd talk about that soon. When I pressed her, she just said there were some complications with the trust that Dad was handling. My 18th birthday came and went. When I brought up the trust transfer again, Dad finally sat me down. He looked uncomfortable as he explained that they'd borrowed against the trust to help Marcus with his business opportunity. He said it was just temporary, that Marcus would pay it back with profits from the food truck, and I'd have my college money back within a year. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. "How much did you borrow?" I asked. "Most of it," Dad admitted. "But Marcus is going to pay it back with interest. This is a solid investment in our family's future." I ran to my room and called the bank. After confirming my identity and explaining the situation, the representative told me the brutal truth: the account had been completely empty 3 months ago. $75,000, my grandfather's life savings, my entire future gone. When I confronted my parents, they had it all justified in their heads. Mom cried and said Marcus had been struggling for so long that he deserved a chance to prove himself. Dad insisted it was a family investment and that my education could wait a year or two while Marcus got established. They seemed genuinely shocked that I was upset. "Family supports family," Mom kept saying. Grandpa Joe would have wanted us to help Marcus too, but the worst part was Marcus's reaction. When I cornered him about it, he actually got angry at me. He said I was being selfish, that I could always get student loans like everyone else. But this was his one shot at success. He accused me of being jealous of his opportunity and trying to sabotage his dreams. The food truck venture lasted exactly 4 months. Marcus had no business experience, no understanding of food service regulations, and no work ethic. He'd show up late, serve mediocre food, and blame customers when sales were poor. His partner disappeared with most of the remaining cash, leaving Marcus with a broken-down truck and massive debt. By then, I'd missed my college enrollment deadlines, I'd lost my dorm room, my spot in the pre-med program, everything. My parents kept promising they'd figure something out, but Marcus' business failure meant the money was just gone, not invested, gone. I ended up taking a gap year that turned into 2 years, working full-time at a medical supply company and living in a tiny studio apartment. When I finally did start college, it was at a community college while working nights. I managed to transfer to a 4-year school eventually, but my dreams of medical school were effectively over. I couldn't take on that much debt without any family support. I graduated with my biology degree at 25, 6 years later than planned, with $45,000 in student loans. I found work as a lab technician, decent pay, but nothing like the future I'd planned. Marcus, meanwhile, had moved back in with our parents and was working sporadically. Still convinced his next big idea would pan out, I moved across the state for work and gradually reduced contact with my family. Every conversation with my parents included some mention of Marcus' struggles or hints that I should be more understanding. No one ever apologized for stealing my inheritance. No one ever acknowledged that they'd destroyed my carefully planned future for Marcus's whim. 3 years of minimal contact passed. I heard through cousins that Marcus had gotten married to a woman named Jessica, and they'd had twin boys. I didn't attend the wedding, I wasn't even invited. Last month, my entire life got turned upside down again. I was at work when my phone started ringing, non-stop calls from my parents, my aunt, even some cousins I hadn't talked to in years. I finally answered when my mom called from a number I didn't recognize. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her. Through the sobs, I pieced together the story. Marcus and Jessica had both been arrested on drug charges, methamphetamine possession and distribution. The twins, now 4 years old, had been taken by Child Protective Services. But it got worse. During the arrest, police had discovered that Marcus and Jessica had been living in their car with the children for weeks. They'd lost their apartment months ago, and neither set of grandparents had known the kids were homeless. Jessica's parents wanted nothing to do with the situation. And my parents, now in their mid-60s and dealing with dad's diabetes complications, couldn't take custody. The state is going to put the boys up for adoption. Mom sobbed into the phone. Our grandsons are going to lose their family forever unless someone steps up. You're their uncle, your family, you have to help us. The audacity was breathtaking. After stealing my entire future to fund Marcus's fantasy, after years of defending his choices and enabling his failures, they wanted me to clean up this mess too. They wanted me to take in 2 traumatized children, kids I'd never met, and somehow build a life around that responsibility. Where was this family loyalty when you took my grandfather's money? I asked. Mom's tone shifted immediately. That was different. That was an investment in Marcus's future. This is about innocent children. No, I said. This is about you wanting me to fix the consequences of choices you all made. You chose Marcus over me then, and now you want me to choose him over my own life again. Dad got on the phone, his voice stern. These boys are your blood. If you don't help, they'll grow up in foster care. Is that what you want on your conscience? I hung up. They've been relentless since then. Calls, texts, emails, even showing up at my apartment. Each message is some variation of family obligation and innocent children. And what would Grandpa Joe think? My aunt called me selfish and heartless. Cousins have been reaching out on social media, sharing photos of the twins and asking how I could abandon them. The emotional manipulation is intense. But what really gets to me is the photos. Those boys look exactly like Marcus did at that age, the same dark hair, the same bright eyes that I remember from old family pictures. They're innocent in all this, just like I was innocent when my family decided my future was worth less than Marcus' pipe dreams. I've been doing research on what taking them would actually mean: a guardian ad litem appointments, home studies, potential legal battles if Marcus and Jessica get clean and want them back. The financial cost alone would be enormous: childcare, healthcare, education, just the day-to-day expenses of raising 2 children. I make decent money as a lab technician, but I'm still paying off student loans and trying to save for my own future. Taking on 2 kids would mean giving up any dreams I have left, maybe going back to school for my master's degree, or buying a house, or even just having the freedom to make choices about my own life. But every night, I lie awake thinking about those boys. They didn't choose their parents. They didn't choose to be born into this dysfunction. They're facing the foster care system through no fault of their own. Just like I faced financial ruin through no fault of mine. The difference is, I was 18 when my family betrayed me. I had some ability to rebuild, even if it was harder than it should have been. These boys are 4 years old. If they don't get adopted quickly, they could spend their entire childhoods bouncing between foster homes. Yesterday, my mom left a voicemail that broke me. She said the boys keep asking for their parents, that they don't understand why mommy and daddy aren't coming home. She said they're in separate emergency placements right now because the system is overwhelmed. And there's no guarantee they'll be placed together long term. They need family, she said through tears. You're the only family they have left who can take them. Please don't let our grandsons become strangers. I sat in my car after work and cried harder than I have since Grandpa Joe died. Because part of me wants to say yes, part of me wants to be the person who saves these kids from a broken system, who gives them stability and love and a chance at a normal life. But another part of me is furious that I'm even being asked. My family destroyed my future once before for Marcus' sake. Now they want me to sacrifice what I've managed to rebuild, again for Marcus' sake. If I take these boys, what message does that send? That my life, my plans, my dreams will always be secondary to cleaning up Marcus' messes? I called the caseworker to get more information about the boys' situation. She was kind but honest. The likelihood of Marcus and Jessica regaining custody is minimal given the severity of the charges and their history. The boys will likely be available for adoption within a year. She also told me something that made my blood run cold. The boys have been displaying signs of trauma and neglect. They were underweight when taken into custody, and the older twin has been having night terrors. They've been through more than any 4-year-old should ever experience. They need consistency and patience. The caseworker said, taking them on would be a huge commitment, but they're resilient kids. With the right support, they could heal from this. I'm supposed to make a decision by next week. If I don't step up, they'll continue in the adoption process through the state. My parents have made it clear they think I'm condemning the boys to a lifetime of instability if I walk away, but I keep coming back to the same question: at what point does family loyalty become self-destruction? My parents taught me that my needs come second to Marcus's wants. If I take these boys, am I perpetuating that dynamic, or am I breaking it by choosing to help innocent children regardless of their parents' failures? I don't know what the right answer is. I don't know if there is a right answer. All I know is that once again, my family's choices have put me in an impossible position, and no matter what I decide, someone is going to suffer for it. The boys deserve better than this. They deserve parents who chose to have them and are prepared to care for them. They deserve better than becoming pawns in my family's dysfunction. But maybe they also deserve a chance with someone who understands what it means to have your family fail you when you need them most. I have 5 more days to decide whether to let my grandfather's great-grandsons disappear into the system, or to spend the rest of my life taking care of the consequences of the same choices that destroyed my own dreams. Either way, everyone loses, just like they did when my family chose Marcus' food truck over my medical school. Some betrayals are so deep that no choice you make afterward can ever really make things right. 6 months later I took them. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let those boys disappear into the system, knowing I had the power to prevent it. The night before my deadline, I kept thinking about Grandpa Joe and what he would have wanted. Not what he would have wanted for Marcus, what he would have wanted for 2 innocent kids who shared his blood. The transition has been brutal. Jamie and Jake are bright kids, but they came to me with trust issues, behavioral problems, and trauma responses that break my heart daily. Jake still wets the bed and won't sleep alone. Jamie asks me almost every day when mommy and daddy are coming home, and I have to find new ways to explain that they're not. My parents have been minimally helpful, despite their pleas for me to take the boys. They visit once a month, bring some toys, and leave after a few hours looking exhausted. All the family comes first rhetoric disappeared once the actual work began. I've had to completely rebuild my life around them. I moved to a larger apartment, changed to day shifts at work, and arranged for a babysitter network that costs more than my old rent. My student loan payments are on hardship deferment because I simply can't afford them anymore. The boys are in therapy, which insurance barely covers. I'm in therapy too, trying to work through my own resentment about how I ended up in this situation. Some days I feel like I made the right choice. Other days I feel like I sacrificed my life for the same family dysfunction that already sacrificed it once. Marcus writes letters from prison occasionally. They're full of apologies and promises to get clean and be a better father. He has no idea what his son's daily lives are like now. The nightmares, the fear, the slow work of building trust. He talks about getting out and being a family again like the past year was just a brief interruption. I don't write back. What I've learned is that there's no such thing as a decision that makes everything okay. I saved those boys from the foster system, but I'll probably never have children of my own now. I gave them stability, but I'll likely never own a house or go back to school or have any of the future I'd rebuilt after my family's first betrayal. But when Jake laughs at my terrible jokes, or when Jamie draws me a picture and calls me his hero, I think maybe some choices are worth making even when they cost you everything. Maybe this is what real family looks like, not the people who take from you when it's convenient, but the choice to give when someone truly needs it. I'll never forgive my parents for what they did to my inheritance, or for putting me in this position, but I can live with the choice I made for these boys, even if it means I'll be paying the price for Marcus' failures for the rest of my life. Some cycles you can't break, but maybe you can choose who suffers for them. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.